friends will be home. And after 10 or 15,000, Mike is just heartbroken. Really.
Hello, can you hear us over on the other side of Zoom?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Ready? I'd like to call together the Monday, December 6th meeting of the Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Coor. Here. Alder Thomas. Here. Alder Goforth. Here. Alder Groupie. Here. Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 15th meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We have one appearance tonight. Wes Mossman Black is here to give us an update on San Damiano. Yep, and if you'd like to just go up to the podium, Wes.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time. My name is Wes Mossman Black, and I'm one of the board members of the Friends of San Damiano, also one of the members of the project steering committee. And we thought it would be good just to provide a year-end update for the council as we're sort of rounding out the year, important year for the project and turning the corner into 2022. So for the past year, we've had some really important milestones for the Friends and for the project. It was an organizational year for us. We put together our organizational infrastructure, fundraising infrastructure. The city took the big action of closing on the property in June. That was very important. We helped organize the cleanup day for over 175 people on site. We spent a great deal of time formalizing the relationship between the Friends and the city, and that was really important as we was having clear roles and responsibilities and a clear charge. It's critical moving forward. And we spent time this past late summer, fall, winter launching the project steering committee. As outlined in the MOU between the city and the Friends. We've met 3 times since August. And really for the fundraising for this project, the steering committee work is foundational. It's critical because that's the committee that sets the timeline for the project, our mission, and it's hard to raise funds if you can't answer questions. And so that work that we've done together has been very foundational and critical as we move forward. So the mission of that steering committee is to engage the community in the development of a financially feasible master plan to conserve San Damiano as a public asset. And for the Friends, that's critical, aligns with our mission to conserve the property. And over the next 12 to 18 months, as the city's wrapping up an assessment on the house, as you know, and an archaeological assessment on the grounds, as you're well aware, the Friends will be working on raising funds to support the master planning, the community engagement process for the park. The city's plan is to publish an RFP this spring for professional services to start that engagement and master planning process. And assuming funds are available, the master planning process would start in June. The Friends is going to raise the funds to support that process, and the target right now is $150,000 for professional services for that process. 12 to 18 months is the projected timeline to engage the community and develop concepts for the master plan. There are going to be multiple points for the community to be engaged. So, early on as concepts are put together and then throughout the process. And the goal would be to recommend the concept and conceptual plan back to the council by the end of 2023. As of December 5th, we have raised more than $250,000 in gifts and pledges. Included in that total are the results of a very successful kickoff to our year-end appeal. Menonah Bank put forth $5,000 in matching funds to match all the funds that we raised on Giving Tuesday. That was last week. In a day, we exceeded that total. We raised $7,000 to meet the match And on top of that, we secured an additional $5,000 in pledges that will match the rest of gifts that we secure through the end of the year. So it was a great start this last week. With the project timeline set forth by the steering committee, we've got a very clear goal for our fundraising moving into next year. And we look forward to engaging that firm and starting the planning next year as well. And to that, we've also have $40,000 in outstanding grant requests to help with the master planning work. So look at our website, sandamionamonona.com .org for updates. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can sign up to give. I encourage you all to give. And there's a monthly newsletter that we've launched as well. So we will keep you up to date on the work that we're doing, and happy to come back with further updates as needed.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Wes? Thanks, Wes. You have been a great help getting all this off the ground. I really appreciate it and appreciate your update. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Okay, there are no more appearances. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Moving on to council action items, number G1A, under unfinished business, consideration of ordinance 11-21-745, amending parking restrictions on Shore Acres Road, and this is put forth by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move approval.
Second.
Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. This appears tonight for the second reading. The October 6th Public Works Committee meeting voted to recommend this approval to City Council. Members of the public were at the October 6th meeting and requested change for this section of roadway, and the Public Works Committee agreed. So what we're bringing forward for the second read tonight, the west side of the street, northbound lane, there will be no parking anytime. On the east side, northbound lane, that is what we're asking the change for. No parking for street maintenance, second and fourth Tuesday of the month from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that will give enough time for city crews to complete services that are planned for. So we did send a letter out in late October. We've had positive feedback from that letter, nothing negative that came back. So it seems like the change is good with the neighbors. So we're seeking your approval tonight.
Any questions for Dan? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I
Aldermore.
don't have a question. I just have a comment, which is to say I just really appreciate Public Works doing everything that they could to accommodate the needs, obviously, of the people on that street, while recognizing that we do have maintenance and snow plowing and leaf and all that. And as usual, I think you guys have really stepped up to figure out a solution, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Alder, go for it.
Yeah, I have to second that, what Alder Moore said. I also am wondering if, as a mitigation effort, I know that when we made those rather sweeping parking restrictions, maybe, was it about a year ago, I think, roughly, wondering if, in order to avoid going through this again, because there was a pretty large emotional impact, I would say, on the people who received emails, the people who sent emails, from a relatively small block of homes. I think it was about 18 homes. And I just think of the hours that people invested in these conversations that went on and on for almost a year trying to get this overturned. I'm wondering if we might consider, before we implement those types of restrictions, asking Public Works Commission members to visit the street so they can see things in context or something, or even just having a visual like Google Street View, something available before those conversations happen, those decisions happen. And then also if maybe, how, I guess I'd like to know, like, how are residents being contacted before those decisions are happening?
They are.
Okay.
And we do go through all of that at our meeting.
Yeah.
So nobody was caught off guard here.
Okay.
The initial response was we heard from one resident.
Okay.
And that's what the committee made their decision on, was the 1 versus the 17. It just generated some feedback after things were implemented.
Yeah,
We had discussions, I think, at least 3 times about it.
okay.
So we did do all that beforehand. And that is standard operating procedure for us.
Yeah.
We send out letters, we ask for feedback, we talk about it, and then they move forward. So
Okay. So you don't have any other ideas or suggestions necessarily on how to mitigate this? Or I know another area that's struggling with with these changes that were made were the apartments right behind Gunderson Funeral Home, just west of Gunderson. They're unable to abide by these parking regulations because there's just not enough parking there, and I don't know if that's being enforced necessarily, but I know it's tough down there, and I'm sure you're struggling to do services as well. Just wondering if there's anything we can do further and beyond, because there was a lot of time investment, I would say, just from this Shore Acres block.
Alder Thomas.
Yeah, I was just going to comment about the Shore Acres one. When we have these, we've got the city's interest, we've got the neighbors' interest, we've got the people who want to park there. Mm-hmm. And so you have to work out some sort of compromise. Mm-hmm. On the Shore Acres one, because there was some strange concerns, I don't know how to put it politely, but it was difficult trying to work out a compromise with those people, and it was more challenging than it usually is. As for the stuff on Gordon, the problem is that when Plan Commission, as you know, tries to, we have restrictions on people having parking, off-street parking. Those were built when people had 1 car and now there's 2 cars. And it's very difficult to accommodate the people who need to use the street, the public works people, and buildings that have more cars than they have parking for. And it really isn't, while we need to be accommodating and work with them, we have a lot of interests that compete, and so it's always challenging, and people aren't, at least a few people aren't going to be happy. But generally, the majority of people are. And I think you just talk and you work and you try and compromise. That's what you can do when there are difficult situations, which Dan gets these phone calls, which are, some of them, not very pleasant.
Oh, sure.
And they do the best they can. And I think the Public Works Committee over the years has done a really good job of trying to look at all sides of the issue to the best of their ability. Okay.
I agree.
I was going to say, maybe, is there a way that we can, because the compromise you came up with was really excellent.
It was Dan's compromise.
Yeah, and I'm glad you were able to figure that out, and that was, great work on that. I'm wondering, can we start with that, like more of a soft touch as an option versus going no parking, at all? Is that just not feasible typically? Or is it just, it's block by block?
Well, it's very dependent on the situation that we have. That's a very dense area. We weren't getting services completed in that area. Mm-hmm. Alternate site parking is very common throughout the United States. And what we did there is really no different than what the city of Madison does, Verona, Middleton. It's common to have alternate site parking in the high dense areas so we can get one side of the street on one day and the other side the next day. It wasn't something that we just decided to put in place and it's passed. It went through several meetings. We sent out letters. We did not hear back from anybody, again, until after it was approved and the signs went up. So we do our part as staff to notify, to gather feedback, so when I take it to the Public Works Committee, they can make an informed decision. That recommendation comes to council based on the same information. So we do what we can ahead of time. It's always after the fact where we get the comments.
Right, sure.
So
I would say, like with the apartment buildings, and I know that's really challenging because we can't send letters to the residents. It just gets posted kind of in the entryway. That if you ever, want to use me as an alder, I would be happy to go door to door there and giving them a heads up in case they do want that opportunity, because I think these are a lot of folks that are working unusual hours. They're probably working right now and they're unable to attend these meetings. So please know that that option is available, and I'd be happy to do that legwork if you need.
Alder Groupie.
Yeah, I think these are legitimate concerns to bring up, and I think, it raises some bigger, more systemic questions about, like, if we're having a new apartment building built, we need to make those accommodations for families with more than one car, for example, or try to figure out ways in advance for creative parking solutions that accommodate these changing needs. I also think the access issue as far as being able to attend and comment is important, but I think the biggest thing that we're showing here is that we're willing to take that public input and work to a compromise, because that was a continuous dialogue that carried on after decisions were made. And I don't know that we've heard from a lot of people from the St. Teresa place, but I wondered if we would talk about that again if we continue to have conversations about that with residents. So I appreciate the dialogue. I obviously know that a lot of work goes in on both sides to make sure that we are doing our best to accommodate all people. But I do think these are important considerations to make for future projects, whether it be apartment buildings, et cetera. But yeah, I appreciate the change and that you were willing to make some compromises that worked for everybody. So thank you.
Anyone else? Dan, did you have anything else to say?
Nope.
Okay. All right, all in favor of amending the ordinance regarding the parking restrictions, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, item B, consideration of Resolution 21-11-2524, approving a certified survey map, CSM, for Lot 9 of the River Place Platt at 6501 Monona Drive, put forth by the Plan Commission. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
And Doug Plowman is here to speak about
Thank
this.
you. Thanks. Good evening, everybody. This is the second read for the request to divide Lot 9 of the River Place Platt into 2 lots by a certified survey map. This is the former Old National Bank site at 6501 Monona Drive. The plans call for a Chipotle on the northern lot closest to West Broadway and a future medical clinic to the south. The CSM received Public Works Committee approval or recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 1st and the Plan Commission recommendation on November 8th. And the city had Via review the plans, and their review letter is included in the city council packet. The Plan Commission recommendation includes responding and addressing the comments of that letter, as well as including a cross-access easement for the 2 lots to allow access to River Place. We also have Erin Chapman here this evening from Dover Consulting representing the applicant. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions about the CSM or any comments? No, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you both for coming.
Really excited.
Thank you, guys.
Just say it again, everybody. Really excited about this one.
Thank you.
All right. Item GC, consideration of Resolution 21-11-2521, amending the 2021 capital budget for a public safety building feasibility analysis study put forth by City Administrator Gatto, Fire Chief McMullen, and Police Chief Cheney Austin. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments from the last time that we talked about this. We did bring this forward to the Public Safety Committee at their November 28th meeting. They provided a couple of recommendations and feedback. One, will adjust the timeline that's in the scope of work to reflect where we are in the process now. So some of the dates will get pushed back a little bit, which is fine. We will revise the scope of work to add that the report that the firm produces be provided to and presented to the Facilities Committee, the Sustainability Committee, and the Public Safety Committee in addition to City Council. And then separate from this scope of work and this phase of the project, we will likely put together an ad hoc building committee to help guide the project once we get into that second phase. So once we're looking to do the RFP for architectural design and engineering, but that would be something much later in 2022. But that's just for the radar, I guess, for the project. So with that feedback, from the Public Safety Committee, if the council is to approve this tonight, I would then reach out to FGM Architects and make those modifications to the scope, get them signed on, and then we would start work on this phase 1 feasibility analysis. Happy to take any questions.
Alder Kur.
Who do you envision being on that ad hoc building committee?
I just started thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd likely be a representative from at least one of those 3 different committees, member council, and some community members who haven't really put any thought into it yet.
Obviously, we'd have people from the police department, fire, public safety committee. Yeah.
I guess
That's something we're going to look at after the new year.
I guess I'd strongly suggest that we have facilities heavily represented on that committee, particularly because we have 2 people from the fire department on facilities. They have unique skills in both the building facilities area as well as use of this type of building. So.
Yep, we will definitely be expanding this particular project. I think, as we explained, is strictly a look at the site to see if the building of this size would fit there. It's nothing to do with the design or everything, but certainly once we get more into this, we will be having a much bigger variety of people on a building committee going forward. So, anything else?
No.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We are moving the Winnipeg Road project to the back of the agenda because Josh is on his way from Cottage Grove. So we told him we'd move that back, and once he arrives, we'll bring that up again. So under new business, item B, consideration of resolution 21-12-2525, authorizing a new contract with the Nehemiah Community Development Corporation for community facilitation services, and this is put forth by, here he comes. So go ahead with
Finish this
him.
one first.
By City Administrator Gatto.
Thank you. So what I've got in your packet here is a resolution for first read tonight, and then a proposed scope of work for what I'd call kind of our second year of work with the Nehemiah Center. I've got Karen Reese from Nehemiah on the line as well. I believe at one of the last city council meetings, Alder Groupie had asked for kind of a recap of where we've been in kind of our year 1 of engagement with Nehemiah, and then where do we envision us going in year 2. So what we've got in the scope is a couple of different things, and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but really the first year of engagement was focusing a little bit more on internally with city staff and the council and policymakers on kind of understanding where we are, what is our baseline, and where can things go. There were a couple of community touch points events in the first year contract. Year 2 is going to build off of some of that work internally with staff and council, but also shift the focus a little bit to some more external community engagement. So it's not just city staff members that are engaged in this work, but also members of the community get involved and invested in this work as well. So we've got a scope that's a bit revised from our year 1. Year 2, we're looking at $29,500. There is a little bit of carryover from year 1 with some executive coaching meetings with the mayor, Dr. G, and myself, that'll get moved over from year 1 to year 2. But the bulk of the work is the $29,500 that's in the scope now. Karen, if you have anything you want to provide an overview or any comments on the scope?
Sure, would it be possible to share my screen?
Yeah, let me give you rights here. Just give me 1 second. There you go.
All right, well, thank you so much for having us tonight. It's really been great working with you all in the city, alders, residents, mayor, Ryan, city staff. It's been great to get to know you all and to start to dig into some of the things that you want to work on together as a city. So I wanted to just give a quick recap here of what we've done over the past year. This first slide here just shows just the laundry list of services that we outlined in the original proposal. We have completed most of those things. The one thing that is currently outstanding is African American assessment, which will be completed by the end of the month, and it's basically just based on our observations and conversations with African American residents within the city of Monona, kind of building on the issues noted in the assessment report that might give us some focus for year 2. Also noted as in progress, one of our items was creation of a community advisory council. So I'll explain that in a second here, but obviously that is, in progress through the ad hoc work group that is currently running. The first thing that we did is submitted an assessment report, which involved a number of interviews with city staff, alders, residents, some folks related to the school district. And in your assessment report, there are two people that are listed as residents. And I just want to be clear that a number of people, some of those were from the listening sessions, but there were 2 that I interviewed separately that were not affiliated in any other way. So just so that makes sense. But we listened to several people and we wrote up our themes in a report that you all have access to. And for those that are listening, that report is on the City of Monona website if you would like to read it. We conducted some cultural engagement sessions with council and staff. The first one was on January 25th, and then we did 2 more where we split. We did one session with staff, and then we did one session with council, just to kind of target issues a little bit more, a little different need for those 2 groups of people. And I have here showing our general approach to this kind of work. So as Brian mentioned, in our first year, we're really just trying to gain alignment for the things that we're doing, learn more, and we like to plan and cultivate so that when we move forward in years 2 or 3, the action steps that we take really do reflect the goals and desires of the city and also kind of, that level of engagement that the city would like to go into. So this is not a linear process. These steps that you see are iterative and they build upon each other, but we're looking at aligning on racial justice goals, expanding our knowledge of race and history, because these are things that not many of us have really learned have a comprehensive knowledge base about. So we look at that through both factual history and then also lived experience and stories. We then, just scratched the surface and dived into the cultural identity of the City of Monona and its departments. And this is something that the ad hoc work group is working on as well. And then a very important step that often gets discounted in these processes is making sure that we engage with each other. So not just amongst city staff, not just amongst alders, but making sure that all the voices are coming together so that we can build a complete picture. We held some listening sessions, and we also supported the police department and the city in its search for a new police chief. So our first listening session was conducted on October 13th in 2020, which that information was included within the assessment report. We conducted another session with the Police and Fire Commission that was hearing from the community about the search for the new chief and what they'd like to see. And while it's not technically a listening session, I did want to note that we did an interview with WVMO that is available on the city website as well for review, and really just talking about our partnership between the city and Nehemiah, reflecting that it really is a true partnership and we're working together on this. The city contracted with GovHR to kind of lay out the process and help with the search for the police chief, and we were engaged in that process, held several meetings with GovHR staff, and then also helped with the survey design that went out for folks. We also met with Chief Cheney Austin and made some recommendations for hiring and training based on our conversations there. And then, as you all know, recently we have the ad hoc work group on diversity and equity issues, which super excited to be working on that. Earlier this year, there was, what we had proposed at Nehemiah was a community-facing advisory group. There were already conversations in progress with Alder Moore and others about Truth and Reconciliation Council. And so through those conversations, we decided that this work group might be the best place to start. You all took that on as a council and agreed. And so we've started those meetings with the appointed work group and have been working through a facilitated process where we're really, again, using that alignment focus that we like at Nehemiah to make sure that we are all speaking the same language in the room. We all know what we mean when we say equity, when we say diversity, and what we want to see in our city. And we've been meeting bi-monthly. The first meeting was July 26th. We've been meeting bi-monthly and are just in the stages of beginning to talk about what that final report and recommendations will look like. and starting to flesh out of all the very complex issues that we've discussed as a group, and are looking forward to delivering that to you in the next couple of months. So for year 2, you have the proposal ahead of you, but again, just to reiterate what Brian shared there, we'll be digging in again. Oh, and then, which was not included here, but 13 staff members did participate in our 9-week Black History for a New Day course, which I think will be really instrumental in taking our sessions forward with our training with staff and council, and really helping to solidify that alignment among department staff and figuring out what is important going forward for how staff leaders determine the equity goals that will happen within their departments, their priorities. We'll continue to support that work group and really, make sure that we not only help wrap up this current session, but help with implementation of the recommendations that come out of that. We'll do 3 more listening sessions. We're looking at quarterly, first, second, and third quarter for those sessions, not just to let people know what we're doing, but also to make sure that we're engaging that community voice, letting the City of Monona residents know that they can speak into this process, that it's not set in stone, that it is an ever-evolving process whereby we do our best to make sure all voices are heard. One thing here, citywide equity opportunity list creation and collaboration. So basically, it's a lot of words to say. We want to make sure that we're recognizing all the different kinds of efforts that are happening, not only with what we're doing at Nehemiah, but what all your departments have been working on, and related agencies have been working on to further diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts on their own. And so how do we collate that in the form of a web page or a brochure or other kinds of media that could best get this message out into the community, and also to keep a record of what we've done, so that moving forward after our work is through with the City of Monona, you all have a solid record that you can carry through and build upon. And I have a little typo here. In your proposals, you'll see that we want to work with different city departments and just kind of see where everyone is with their current plans within diversity, equity, and inclusion, do a little bit of an assessment about where folks are with that work, and then help to develop some strategic plans for those departments going forward. So that's what we're looking at. Again, really excited. I hope that you will choose to continue on with us for this next year, and happy to answer any questions about what we've done so far or what we've proposed for year 2.
Questions, anyone? Alder Moore?
Yeah, Karen, welcome and thank you for all your work. Thank you to all of Nehemiah for your work with the city. I guess I'm wondering what you mean by city plans, because I'm not aware of, and I think this is part of the communication challenge with this, but I'm not aware that, I have the city departments been asked to each create their own equity plans within the departments?
This would be part of that effort in year 2, so we would be working
Right,
with
yeah,
department
no
heads
one's
to create
been
those
asked
plans.
that so far, but we do know, just based on conversations that we've had with various staff throughout the city, that people are thinking about this.
Okay.
So, whether or not they'd be asked to create a formal plan, that's, something that we would discuss with you, with the mayor, and others. But for those who are moving forward, have things in progress, or who would like assistance in developing these plans, we're making space to do that.
Okay.
I think especially we're thinking about the departments that are more public-facing, that have a lot of the seniors, the library, and Park and Rec, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the library has
And all of those
already.
groups in our assessment and afterwards have, mentioned specific ideas about how they can move it forward and are particularly interested in that sort of thing. So we want to be able to support that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that the chair of the ad hoc committee just reached out briefly by email today, but we haven't heard much about what the ad hoc committee has been doing. And so to see in this proposal I mean, I understand that they haven't written up they haven't quite completed their work, but it has been 6 months. So, and this proposal obviously very much with so many sessions in it, very much relates to what they're doing or what they've done. So, can you illuminate it all without letting the cat out of the bag per se, with what they're thinking moving forward?
Yeah, so it would definitely be a good idea to hear directly from the chair about that for an official meeting. But so what I can say is the group has been thinking a lot about what do they want to see as residents of the city, and this ranges from things like looking at how to make events more diverse, to taking a look at what kind of policies and procedures are in place in the city to make sure that voices of people of color are heard, to make sure there's equitable access to process. And then also just considering that, everywhere around the country when we talk about race-based issues, we generally have some level of pushback or disagreement, and we want to, especially when we change things that have been long-standing. I'm not saying that's what the work group is proposing, but we want to be ready for any kind of conflict or disagreement that comes up. So there is an element to what the group is considering that kind of relates to that concept. The number of training sessions that are going into this proposal are fairly separate from the work that the work group is doing. And while they will propose that there is continued, almost for sure they will propose that there's continued educational and training opportunities, not just for staff leadership, but also for all staff throughout the city. The number of sessions does really build on the work that we did in the first year, the conversations we had, and what we feel is necessary for us to really gain some traction and make some good progress going forward with both department heads and the council. So while they complement each other, they're definitely not duplicative. And as we go forward, the things that are outlined in our Year 2 proposal, we like to leave things a little less specific because we want to be able to be responsive to the things that the work group is recommending and putting forward. So we don't want to speak for them, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're working contrary to them. So we're really going to make sure that as these things evolve, they can coexist and they build upon each other.
Mm-hmm. Just one more as a follow-up to that. So, as you know, I'm a consultant by day, so it's hard for me not to put my consultant hat on and think about my own proposals and contracts. And I know one of the things that I'm always focused on is the actual deliverables, like at the end of the day, what's the client going to end up with? And so I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that, besides the number of sessions you're going to do, or the number of trainings you're going to do. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more about kind of what will be different, what will be delivered as a result of the work, at the end of Year 2.
Sure, and I'd be happy to add a little bit more of this to the proposal if that's helpful as well. We at Nehemiah walk kind of a careful line between promising deliverables that we know may not end up being in the end exactly how we write them. We want to give you specifics, but we also, again, want to lock into something that's going to inhibit our ability to use this discovery process to make sure that we're hearing from folks and be flexible as those voices come in so that what we're developing truly reflects, what people are looking for as city residents. But what I can say is that through the training sessions, we can demonstrate this through pre and post surveys that we do with the staff and council with our sessions, having people more aligned on, what does it mean when we say racial equity, diversity, having people more aware of the issues that we see related to racism within society, specifically within the city of Monona, and not only being aware of that, but understanding some of the history, how we got here and why we're still here. So we'll have that understanding demonstrated at the end of this year. And then also at the end of the second year, we'll do a brief written update, a follow-up on the assessment to let you know in writing where we are on things. We will have the report that comes out of the ad hoc work group with not only recommendations, but some suggestions for implementation for that. And then at the end of year 2, we will have developed implementation plans and strategies for those items that the work group recommends. And we'll go through a prioritization process with that work group, and whatever body may come to be developed after that work group is complete. The citywide opportunity list will have something that's curated and present, I would imagine, on the website, also in written form, and we can work with people who participate in that to figure out, does it need to be a brochure? Does it only need to be on the website? What makes sense in terms of accessibility? And then for any work that we do with departments, we'll make sure that they're coming up with detailed plans that not only state what they'd like to accomplish, but outline their strategies and somewhat of a timeline that they'd like to look at going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate the additional clarity. Anyone else? Alder Court.
For the pieces that are still outstanding, I'm wondering if we can have those folded into this agreement, just with a reference that they were budgeted from the previous year, just so that there's a clear carryover, so that we're sure that we're responsive. I guess now that we're at the end of year 1, and I know a lot of work has been done, I just am not sure how much the community knows about what's been done. And kind of what's the tangible piece walking away. And I realize that we've done these sessions and things, but I think the community, I get questions a lot of what's going on with that? So there isn't a good understanding in the community about what's being done and how that's changed our experience in the last year. I'm just wondering if perhaps we could craft some sort of press release or something that could go out so that we could get some traction behind kind of a clearer picture about what's been done and kind of what the impact has been. I understand that you've done some executive coaching. Perhaps there's something that came out of that would be useful to share with the community. I feel like we're not telling our story as well as we could be.
Sure, we'd be happy to help with that. Really, the only outstanding thing from year 1, we did mention in this, the executive coaching sessions will carry over. The only outstanding thing is the African American assessment, which will be completed by the end of the year in the next week or so. And I don't know if you want to comment specifically that the work on the what we originally recommended as an advisory council, which is now the work group, will carry through. So I don't know if you want us to outline that specifically. Would that be helpful?
I think if there's any pieces that we're going to be billing for that would carry over, I think that would be nice to include in this document.
Yeah, I can work with you, Karen, to clarify that.
Got it. Okay, great. Thanks. And we'd be happy to help with any kind of public-facing statement that the city would like to make. Part of our community engagement, awareness, listening sessions, part of the purpose of those would be to be more intentional about getting that word out there. One of the tricky parts about this work is that if we're really in this for the long haul, like I mentioned, that alignment piece is so critical in the way we approach this work, is a lot of times, the public is used to seeing like an event that happens or a meeting that happens or sort of a one-off initiative with some results attached to it. But unfortunately, while those things are very valuable, they don't necessarily create long-term change. So in the first year, there was a lot of internal work happening to make sure that when we're able, the work group comes out with these recommendations, we have the support across the city to be able, when I say across the city as a staff, department, alders, we have the support there to move forward. We want to make sure, you all run into this all the time, even though you think that you do your best efforts to let people know what's going on. As you mentioned in the parking conversation, sometimes it's difficult to catch people. So through these awareness events and the opportunity lists creation and just advertising more opportunities for collaboration. We're hoping to work on that more throughout year 2 so that we're starting to get people feeling like they do know what's going on, that they're aware that this is even happening, and if they have the opportunity to do so, they can get involved.
Anyone else? No? Okay. I think next time when we do the final consideration of this, Brian will have the revisions we talked about, and I think Harry is going to come to the next meeting to discuss his thoughts and if anyone has any questions for him. So if there are no other questions, thank you, Karen.
Thank you all.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess Alder Goforth has a question.
I just had just a quick comment, if I could. I know it's challenging to not see results and not have our magic fairy dust that cures racism and inequities. I think it's just so important to realize that these inequities literally exist in every facet of our community and every community in America, and if not beyond those borders. And so it runs so deep. And, it's almost like we open one box and we start discussing that in this committee, and then it leads to the next box, and then it leads to the next one. And it's almost overwhelming. It's been really an incredible committee to serve on. I really appreciated Dr. Reese's ability to break these things down and kind of help us kind of work at chipping them away. But I think, some of the things, many of us have realized is one thing we don't want to see is we don't, because this committee is way more diverse than Monona's representation. And it's a phenomenal committee. It's an amazing group of people. But we don't want to see a committee that is a DEI committee with all these diverse voices at one table, and then all of the documentation and policies of the city plopped on the table saying, okay, fix it all. That's not what we want to see, and that's why, some of us did not, want to embrace the idea of starting this DEI committee that would be, reviewing all of the policies of the city, because that's kind of exactly the opposite of what we want people of color to be doing, right? Asking them to do all this work for free and at no charge or no compensation. And so I think, it's more important that we see diverse voices that exist on all of our committees and throughout, because it's exhausting and very challenging being the only diverse voice on committees. And it takes an enormous amount of resiliency. And so, we just ask for your patience. I think we're doing some pretty incredible work, but this is work where if we had started this 20 years ago, maybe you would see some results now. But so we have a long way to go, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't start. And I'm really glad we have started this process.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Karen. And Brian will be in touch, and we will move on. We'll move back to Josh. Item 2A, consideration of resolution 21-12-2528, approval of recommended design option for improvements to South Winnipeg Road, put forth by the Public Works Committee. So we're just going to be, the Public Works Committee did meet last week. I think probably everybody's heard that they recommended option 3. Josh is going to talk a little bit about that option, I think, Josh, and whatever, answer any questions, and if anyone else wants any other information, please ask. And I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything initially or not. Feel free, certainly.
I will probably when Josh is done over some timelines and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Give me 1 second, Josh.
Can I hold? Can
Yep.
I share?
Just give me 1 second. Okay, should be good.
Okay.
So like Mary said, the Public Works Committee recommended design option 3, and I thought I'd just maybe go over what that includes, as part of, you probably saw in the resolution that staff put together. It includes a mill and overlay and new epoxy pavement markings along the roadway from Bridge Road to Schluter Road. We're going to remove all the bump outs along that stretch of roadway. We are going to remove the street parking along the west side, especially in the southern part where it exists. There's going to be an installation of 5 feet of sidewalk, and what I'm showing up here is the 2 exhibits that we've seen in the past. The existing exhibit that's out there in the southern half, and then there really is going to be no change. The curbs are going to stay where they are, and the sidewalk's going to be added to the east side. The only change that we have on the southern half from today is we're providing 10-foot drive lanes and 6.5-foot bikes. So 6.5-foot bikes will have this buffered bike lane, a couple white stripes, down the side of the road that provides a little bit of buffer away from the cars on the south half. The reason we have more space out here to do that is because the parking is now gone on the west side of the street. When you get to the north half, that's where it becomes, or always has been, the challenge of this entire corridor, as most of you know. The existing east side has the curb right up against that retaining wall. The west side has about 3 feet of space between the back of the curb and that decorative wall at the narrowest point. It widens to about 4.5 feet as you work your way north, but in the far southern limit, it's only 3 feet. So with this option, worst case scenario, we'd have to squeeze it in. We have to squeeze it between the 2 walls. The way the resolution sort of reads is we're going to try to, meander the sidewalk in certain locations to minimize the tree impacts, especially the mature trees. And we're going to shift that curb line. So we're shifting this curb line that you see here. We're shifting that one and the other side all the way over to the decorative wall. There is 6-foot bike lanes and 9-foot drive lanes out there now. We'd have 10 foot and 4 feet. We wouldn't want to go any narrower on the bike lanes than that in order to get a sidewalk and on the east side. We also were going to try to work with the property owners on either side still, just like we did in the beginning a couple of years ago. Maybe there is a chance that we can still move maybe the east side wall and push it back. There's about 4 or 5 feet of right-of-way still there, but we would need that temporary easement to do that construction of the wall on that side. That would provide some terrace space on either side here to, have for mailboxes, to have for the brush and the leaf, storage, the garbage cans. There's a couple of power poles that run along here too. So the biggest thing with squeezing this in is still that tight option up there. What do we do with some of those things that we'll have to work with the residents on along that corridor? When we go into final design, we're going to bring that back to the Public Works group to discuss, what our options are as we approach those residents. Is there any questions?
Speed humps.
Speed humps. Thank you, Kathy. I like that. Installation of an appropriate number of crosswalk speed humps to adequately address speeding throughout the corridor. I haven't looked at what that adequate number is yet, but it's probably somewhere between 3 and 5 along there. Likely at the intersections near the crosswalks to get people across. So you can, similar to what you have up at on the Lincoln Park name jam right now that you just put in. North Winnipeg. Yep, by Schluter Park. That's it.
Nancy's got a question.
Aldermore? First of all, Josh, I want to thank you. I know this has been a long haul, like years. And I really appreciate you taking everybody's feedback, including ours, and certainly all of the residents, and I really appreciate the resident interest in this as well. I think it's been very helpful. So there was discussion at the Public Works Committee meeting as well about whether or not you cross over the sidewalk and put the sidewalk behind the wall. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's the option as we work with residents here and we try to figure out how we're going to accommodate some of these spaces and provide a little green space.
That an alternative would be, I suppose, if you were to cross this sidewalk over to the west side at Owen Road and go along the west side behind the wall. That's one of a few options here that we could decide as we discuss with residents. I just pointed that out at the meeting of there is another option to go that direction. You leave this 3 feet where it is, today. You leave this existing kind of exactly how it is today and just go on the opposite side of the wall. Right. There's still a few more mature trees over on that side. We are, what feels like obviously in the front side of those people's lawns on the other side of that decorative wall, which is going to create some conversation if we go that route.
So it's just a follow-up to that question. I would just say that I think going the sidewalk route rather than the path route, which was discussed, the multimodal path, which was discussed. I know we've gone back and forth. I know I have gone back and forth in my head as to which one would make the most sense, and I just have to say that I think that the sidewalk is definitely the way to go. I'm pleased that the Public Works Committee came to that conclusion, and I say that for a variety of reasons, but first and foremost because I think getting pedestrians out of the street is really important, and people may not be aware that the City of Madison just opened up a big comment period because they're looking at redesigning the bike path in Madison because it's become unsafe being a multimodal path. With dogs and bikes and rollerbladers and scooters and walkers and increased traffic of all of the above. They're really rethinking that whole thing. So I think the multimodal path, and I can say also, having lived in the city of Chicago for 25 years and having been a commuter by bike for 10 miles a day down to the city from Evanston, on the bike path that runs the entire 26 miles, the length of Chicago, that I would not use the bike path all along the lakefront in Chicago, and instead would ride on city streets, including Sheridan Road, on rush hour traffic on my bike because I felt safer there than I did on the bike path. And the city of Chicago actually went from having a singular path for all of the above to separating out the walkers and joggers. So now there's 2 paths. There's one for all the people that have some sort of wheel underneath them, and then people that don't have a wheel underneath them are on another path. So they've had to separate the 2 as well. And so I just think here, again, given what Madison's looking at, given the reality of the increase in traffic that the sidewalk makes more sense. That said, I would hope, and I also just want to point out to people again that might be listening or would listen to this afterwards that this is what, you're 40% in maybe in terms of the design?
Yeah,
right?
that's fair. Yeah.
And that this is very typical. We don't go to 100% until we with all the details including the number of speed bumps and all of that. And I would just hope that as we move forward, if we move forward this plan or with any other plan, that we really focus on, really leave no stone unturned as it relates to, is it speed bumps? Is it speed humps? Is it speed tables? Is it, do our crosswalks, are they colored? Do they have flashing lights or other signage that differentiates the crosswalk so that people, really get a heads up? Do we have stop signs? Is there a stop sign needed somewhere along there to control traffic? Are there, if it's not speed bumps or speed humps or tables, is it, medians or mini rounds or whatever? I just hope that we'll really look at and be creative about looking at how to make whatever design at 30%, we agreed to the absolute best we can as it relates to safety for all concerned. And then we'll look at all of that. And I know I'm going to be relying on your expertise and the 400 some odd people that you tapped into before you went to the last Public Works meeting to help us out there, which of course doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. But I know I'm going to be sleeping better at night knowing if I listen to the engineers and your expertise in designing. And then I'm just going to throw out one thing as you talk to the homeowners that I thought about. I know one of the concerns around the wall, particularly around the folks with the walls, has been the whole leaves and where they put their leaves and leaf pickup. And that Dan, you had said that our leaf machines can't reach over the wall. They're not able to reach over the wall to suck up leaves. And yet it occurred to me at one point we were talking about $250,000 for potentially to move the wall. And it seems to me from an engineering standpoint, it might be remarkably cheaper to have somebody design a new arm for the leaf picker-upper that would reach over a wall or reach to the top of a wall or whatever than to move a wall. If we had to go that route. I'm just thinking outside of the box, thinking, that there's that if it's $250,000, it's just hard for me to imagine that there wouldn't be an alternative to that we couldn't make it work. So I look forward to seeing the additional details, and I thank you for the work.
Alderwood.
Yeah. Just briefly, first, I also wanted to thank Josh and the Public Works Committee and the Public Works Director and everybody else who was involved in it. But Josh, I know you got pulled a lot of different ways with lots of input, and it's an emotional issue, I think, for a lot of folks. I think you've handled that very professionally. I was pleased to see the Public Works Committee recommended the sidewalk. I think that's by far the best, safest, most attractive, most walkable way to do it. You can separate the pedestrians from the bikes and give the bikes their own place separate or marked for the bikes and a separate driving lanes for the motor vehicles. So, but obviously, that north end where you've got the pinch points, that's, I think we will need to, seriously look at is can we live with it within the existing confines? Can we provide the services we need to, or do we need to look at either moving the wall or potentially just, shifting it to that side for a while and going behind it like you talked about? But I think those are some details that could be, need to be looked at. So I guess when Dan comes up, that'd be one question I would have, is how, within these confines, how do you provide the services?
Anyone else? Dan, would you like to come up and...
To address how we figure out leaf collection and brush collection, that's a good question right now, because that's one thing that we'll have to, if option 3 is one that's chosen and we have sidewalks right up against these walls, we will have to figure it out. More than likely come to some form of a request for the Public Works Committee and City Council to do some individualized collection. We don't do that right now, but if this is what we have to do for these few properties, we can we can make some arrangements for that with the blessing of council and committee. So, but we'll look at that more once we have an approved option and we start digging into design and see what we can do. That said, as far as the project timeline, we have the first reading here tonight. Hope to come back on December 20th for recommended approval or city council approval. And then after that, February 2nd, we are hoping to be at 60% plan review at the Public Works Committee. And on February 7th, here at council to go over the 60% plan. Any tweaks that need to be made coming out of those two meetings, Strand will take care of that. We are planning no additional future meetings. We'll complete final design, put it out to bid in the March 10th and March 17th editions of the paper, and hope to have a bid opening on March 24th. We would look at July 11th to October 11th construction timeframe. But there are some additional archaeology research that needs to be done, and from what Josh informed me of today, that would have to take place in spring. But if we stay on track with our timeline and there's no delays, I think he thinks that can be done. So if it's the desire of council to proceed on December 20th, this would be the timeline. I think if it's any later than that, we would probably push it back to bidding in December of 2022. We're looking at any later than March, April timeframe, you're starting to get into potentially higher bid numbers because most contractors have their calendars locked up already. And when you have bids that go out that late, they typically throw higher numbers out there to see what they can get, see if it sticks. So we're looking at that. I know there was comments made at the Public Works Committee meeting that they feel this is being rushed. We've been looking at this for 4 years, and I've detailed the list of meetings that this has been talked about at. So as a staff person, and I can't speak for Josh, but we've been working on this for quite a long time now. And if it is the decision of council to slow it down, then we'll complete the rest of the work throughout the year, and we'll plan for late 2022 bid advertisement, but we'll take direction from council on whatever you choose. So.
Anyone else? Nancy?
I just have a question as it relates to being able to vote on this, which is to say, it seems to me that the Public Works Committee didn't make a decision one way or another as to which way the sidewalk goes, whether or not it goes behind the wall or goes where, what's what we're looking at right here or whatever, because, right? Go ahead.
They did. Option 3 has a sidewalk
Right.
in front of the wall on the east side.
On the east side.
Yep.
I thought that they were leaving it up in the air as to whether the potential to go behind the wall was. I thought that there was some discussion and that they, in a sense, were leaving the potential to cross over and go behind the wall. It's sort of still up in the air, depending on other factors.
No, it was part of the original motion, and it was dropped.
Mm-hmm.
It was not part of the motion and I would ask you, before you make a decision to go behind the wall, if you're at the north end, there's lots of room behind that wall to move it. When you get up closer to Owen Road, to put it behind the wall, I mean, it really... I mean, you can't park on, you talk about not parking, you can't park on the street now any place there.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to rely on your driveways.
Right.
I don't know when the wall and when all of the walls were built. I don't know when it became 100 feet and when that became right of way, but the walls preceded the 100 feet.
Sure.
And for some of the houses. And some of those houses are pretty close, and once you go behind the wall, I mean, you cannot, you didn't hear the hostility when there was, after the meeting, when people talked about going behind the wall. I mean, that
I'm not, I was just trying to get clarity on what we're voting on. I mean, you don't have to talk me into the behind the wall or not, Kath. I'm not going there. I just was trying to get clarity of if that this is the exact plan that we're voting on.
we did not talk, going behind the wall was not part of the motion.
And so if this is the exact plan that we're voting on, then we're not talking to the residents about moving a wall or moving a retaining wall or anything because we're going with exactly this plan? Is that what you're saying?
What you see on the screen there with the sidewalk on the east side in front of the east side wall, the curves are shifted from Owen to Maywood, just as you see on the screen. We are going to work with Mr. Mullmans on what we can do to better provide service at his location.
Okay, so it's just about providing service. It's not about moving any walls at this point. We're doing this.
Well,
okay.
Right. Unless City Council wants to go on a new path and explore
No,
that.
I've been listening to all the meetings. I've sat through all the public works meetings. I just want to make sure. I want to get clarity on what we're working on.
Right.
So I appreciate it. Thank you. Kathy.
have we, and this is a question for Josh, have we not ruled out if Mike Mullen would be willing to sell off a portion, would that make the project simpler? And would we entertain that as an option?
When we first started this, right, the first option that we laid out, it was option 3, and we said, let's see if we can move that east wall over, slide it over some so that we can provide a green space. So we wouldn't have to put the curb on the west wall all the way up against the west wall. We could provide some green space between the sidewalk and the curb. So, Kathy, I would like to leave this meeting, design an option, but I'd like to be able to talk to those residents along there and say, just like Dan's saying, there's some issues here with your service, right, with a few of these things that we've been talking about. What can we all do to work together to see if we can fit something different in here? I don't know if that's going to be moving a wall or not, and if it does, I think we got to come back to Public Works and say, here's what we found at 60% design that we can do, and then that will also come back to council on the 7th, as Dan was saying.
And would you think that would be a better option if we could do that?
I mean, it would be better for all the services that we're talking about. Would it be cost a little bit more? Yes, it's going to cost more to move that one wall, but it would be a better option because you'd provide the green space, and you wouldn't be up against 2 walls.
And I'll talk to you because I did talk to Mike.
Yeah, you did? Okay, good. And some of the residents, now that they know this may be coming, they may say, okay, this is the decided option. We're willing to kind of work under these constraints. Maybe we'll get a little bit better buy-in. Who knows? Yeah. So I still think we need to have those discussions, whether we're changing anything.
Anyone else?
Excuse me?
Alder, go for it.
Yeah. I'm incredibly grateful for all your work and the public works. I know this has been very challenging for the committee and the staff. I do struggle. I really struggle when I look at the image and what it appears is that we're doing is we're trying to be all things for all users. And that I rarely see that work. It's an enormous amount of concrete and asphalt and a wide vision field. I feel like if we had centered bike and ped users up front and designed around that versus having continuing the high volume of traffic that we see there, we would have had a better end product. There's a name for that. It's called a strode. So I'm a Strong Towns member. If you know what a strode is, it's when a street and a road are merged. So a residential street is merged with a high volume, high traffic road. And there are things that should be avoided. I feel like, this corridor is a bike boulevard. It's a beautiful stretch of street, residential street, and I just really wish we had taken more of that direction and working on getting less traffic, less volume down there. On October 5th, a piece of data was released that the sale of e-bikes has gone up 240% in the past 12 months. I don't feel like we're designing for the future. I have concerns that if we adopt this design, that in 15 years we're going to see so much volume of bike traffic that it's not going to be adequate. Alder Moore said it herself, 6 feet paths are not safe for bike users, and we already have an enormous amount of bike traffic down there. So I have real reservations and concerns about this design being a design that's more geared toward yesterday versus tomorrow. And I'm just putting it out up there right now. I know we've been at this for a long while, but things did change dramatically since 2019 when we, last had some residential meetings. And I think, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Anyone else? Alder Coeur.
Well, I just want to point out that this isn't a feasible street for a bike boulevard. The standards are less than 2,000 cars per day, and we're well above that with this road, regardless of the timeline, regardless of whether we're in COVID or not. So it's just not a possibility.
Well, it could have been possible, but it would have taken a little more creativity. But I understand.
I would have welcomed to see your plan if you had a plan that was going to fit that need. We've been talking for months about this, and so if there was something that you wanted to share that was going to work for us, that would have been great. I will say that we've worked really hard, and this is not a road that is an easy one to solve. It's got lots of issues. It's had lots of issues from the beginning. We have put in a tremendous amount of time. Staff have put in a tremendous amount of time. Josh has put in a tremendous amount of time. We've spent a tremendous amount of money, and we're still not at full design. So as much as I'd like for us to go slow, we have spent a tremendous amount of money, and we have to get this done.
Alder Thomas.
Yeah, when one talks about the future, I would love to get fewer cars off Winnequa Road. The problem is, or the challenge is, that we are building a couple of major apartment buildings that are either going to take Winnequa Road or Monona Drive out to Broadway and out to the Beltline. So we're not going to get cars off Winnequa. And we're going to have more cars on Monona Drive. And the intersection at Bridge Road, because of the apartment building down there, there's going to be one at the bowling alley, there's going to be one at BMO. And there's going to be the ones coming from Cottage Grove Road. And so we're going to have more cars driving on there, not less. That is our challenge. I mean, we're limited because of the topography, and we don't have 2 streets. We have 2 of them. One is Winnequa, one is Menonah. Am I thrilled about doing this? No. And there are people I know who are heartsick about losing their life. But it is the reality that we have to do something to please for. We've got the people who live there, we've got the bikers, we've got the walkers, we've got the pets. And there is no good solution. This is, I think, what Public Works thought was the best option available to try and accommodate everybody.
Anyone else? Alder, go for it.
Yeah, Alder Thomas brings up a great point, is the congestion that we're going to see at the intersection of Broadway and Bridge Road with continuing this level of volume of traffic. If we had earnestly examined the one-way, which when the flow was shown of northbound traffic, that's exactly what happens today. And that's exactly what everyone expected would happen. And that is completely doable and fine. It would have been nice to redirect much of that traffic up to Monona Drive, which has higher capacity, because we're going to see some major problems at the corner of Broadway and Bridge, and I don't know how we're going to solve that once this is done. And I also have great concerns about that. I do believe the one-way, had it been studied a little further, a little more in depth, and in earnest, would have been a better solution and would have allowed for the bike boulevard design to happen.
Anyone else?
Mayor? Yes.
Yeah,
I just want to say, you know, at the last Public Works meeting, among other times, Josh pointed out that he tapped into 400 other colleagues and the MPO around the one-way. And so, I mean, I don't know, it just seems to me that this road is kind of mucked up the way it is right now because we didn't listen to the engineers. And so for us to sit here and second guess what all the engineers are telling us about what that would do in terms of traffic flow and just assume that everybody's going to go up to Monona Drive, I just think that's unrealistic. I mean, don't you respect that expertise?
Actually, so as a strong towns member, we don't think that engineers should be really designing streets. It should be really more residential, working with the residents to design the streets versus engineers, because engineers design for cars. So I really wanted to see bike ped centered on this versus having cars centered. So I'll leave it at that. I realize it's basically a done deal. I had to speak my piece because there's going to be some major problems that come forward, and I'm worried for younger people that they're going to have to pay for this twice because this solution, I'm worried, is not going to hold into the future.
Anyone else? Alder Thomas?
I was around when this happened, and I can't resist making a comment, Christie. Everything has a purpose, and Winnequa roads may be, the current Winnequa road may be, purpose may be to show you what a bad example it is when you let citizens design a road. Because what we have doesn't work, and we can blame lots of people, but we didn't listen to the engineers as much as we should have, and they let us down. So when all else fails, they are not the be-all and the end-all, but they know more than most of us. And that's the challenge I think that we have, is to balance their insight with what we'd like to see. So just a piece for the engineers. I don't always agree with you, but sometimes you're right.
Anyone else? Okay. This will be on the agenda on the 20th then. And thank you, Josh, for all your work and time spent on this. And thank you, Dan. All right, we have a couple more items that are starred for immediate approval.
Move to suspend the rules and take these two items out of order.
All right.
I'll second.
I guess I'll read it first. I'll read both items. Can we count one vote on both? Taking both out of order?
I'll record it.
First, item C, consideration of resolution 21-12-2526, approval to purchase video laryngoscopy equipment system put forth by the Public Safety Committee. And then item D, consideration of resolution 21-12-2527, approval to purchase 2 powered stair chairs, also put forth by the Public Safety Committee. All in favor of taking these both out of order, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve item C?
I'll second.
Jerry, do you want to come up and...
Well, good evening. Good evening again to some of you, and then good evening for those that work for finance. This particular item for video laryngoscopy, I'll give you a little bit of history that I learned after I started here. In 2019, the department at that time went through a process to determine what was the best video laryngoscopic equipment for them to use for patient care. It was determined at that time to use the storage system. We purchased one in 2019 using state funding assistance money for $15,000, which equipped Medic 60 with that particular piece of equipment. In meeting with our new medical direction team a couple weeks ago, we were discussing the second ambulance because we're putting it in service more frequently, and it's going to be in service more next year. And she asked what we had on that particular ambulance for this procedure, which is our old equipment, which is a King video scope. And the flat statement I got from her was absolutely not. Take it off the truck. It doesn't record. It doesn't take pictures. which is a requirement under MVP medical direction. If we intubate somebody, they want to see that we actually did it properly. They can review it after the fact and provide training and guidance. So that left me two paths. As I expressed to the Finance Committee, I could go a cheaper path, which would mean I throw away the $15,000 we spent a couple years ago and go with a cheaper system to equip both trucks with a cheaper system, or I can spend the money to upgrade our second ambulance to this higher-end video laryngoscopic equipment. This particular model I consider a Cadillac model for pre-hospital care. There is nothing better on the market, and I've used 6 different versions so far of video scopes. What I looked at when I looked from the data standpoint is when we equipped our crews with this from 2019, all of our crews have had first pass success on every innovation we've done in the field, which is unheard of. Nobody has 100% first pass success. We have. That's because of the equipment that we have. So our new medical director is a very aggressive airway ER physician. So we're going to be doing a lot of training with this. I will say publicly, her comment to me was, well, if you guys want to go with the cheaper route, I'll buy the stores from you and put it on my response card. That's how good of a piece of equipment it is. So this particular resolution is to buy another video scope for Medic 62, plus all the training equipment we need to go with it. When I discussed it with her, if I just buy one more, it's going to be coming off the ambulance on a regular basis, and once that's off the ambulance, I can't put the ambulance in service while it's not on there. So, in working with the supplier for this, they gave us quite the deal they gave us half off, basically, one of them, to be able to provide a piece of training equipment. So, this would be coming out of EMS fund balance for this amount.
Any questions? Alder Grupe.
Just a comment. Speech pathologists use this equipment a lot, and it's awesome. And I feel very close to the department with this initiative. So thanks for looking into it and making sure that you're doing it right.
I appreciate that. It is a fantastic piece of equipment.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Second item D, consideration of resolution 21-12-2527. I guess I already did read this one. Is there a motion to approve item D?
I'll move approval.
Second. Jerry?
Good evening again. So this particular one came about thanks to the council. You approved a new cot and lifting system for next year in the capital budget for our primary ambulance. We brought in both manufacturers, and the one that the crews liked fit within the price profile of what the council had approved. But in discussions, they also operate a powered stair chair, which is unheard of in my experience. I think it's a fantastic piece of equipment and something we use daily to either move people upstairs or move people downstairs. Currently, we have non-powered mechanical stair chairs. Both of them are 8, 10, 12 years old for both of our ambulances. In working with the vendor, with the trade-in, we'll be able to basically purchase a powered stair chair and get a second one for free. So the purchase of the cot and the lift system fit within the budget. What she did was take all of our old equipment on trade, which is fantastic. We're getting far more on trade than what they were worth new, and giving us the second one for free. So what I was proposing is to utilize EMS funding assistance dollars for this. This is a new project. We've never had a powered stair chair, so it fits within the state guidelines for the difference between what the council approved and what this would be. And I will say for both the last resolution, thank you, by the way, the reason that needed to be started for immediate approval is we need to have that ordered and in place before the medical director takes over January 1st. And in this case, I started for immediate approval because there's a 6% price increase January 1st, which would be about $3,000. So I'm trying to save us the dollars and order it now. It'll be invoiced next year, but we're trying to order it now.
Questions? Alder Kuru.
Not a question, just a comment. I wanted to express my appreciation for the investment in this equipment. As I understand it, this will take a load off of our volunteers and our staff and prevent potential injuries. And so I think that that's important as well to note that we're doing something that is supportive to our volunteers in particular.
Yeah, I can tell you just this weekend we moved 3 patients that weighed over 400 pounds. All different patients, all in different areas, and one of them lives on the 2nd floor of a building. So this type of equipment is a lifesaver, for my back and for my crew's back. So it will be a very nice investment to go along with the power lift system.
Anyone else? Alder, go for it.
Yeah, I want to say, it's a perfect example of work smarter, not harder. And I just want to say I appreciate you always looking out for the details, like that 6%. That's easily missed. So thanks, Jerry. Appreciate you always. Keep an eye on the numbers. So.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, boards, etc. First item is updates or discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Alder Groupie.
I just wanted to let people know that Nehemiah is now accepting registration applications for the Black History for a New Day spring course. I know that several staff and city leaders have participated this fall, but I hope that we can kind of rally again and see if anyone else on staff or council would be available to do this spring course as well. And then the other, and that's just, anyone can sign up, so residents as well, anybody in the community that's interested, highly recommend this and hope you will consider looking into it. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that we've had a request from a constituent about potentially looking into renaming some of our streets in Monona. And I think the one in particular that was pointed out was Squaw Circle. I think given our efforts to be a more welcoming and inclusive city and just sort of make amends as best we can for past indiscretions and appropriations, I think that this would be a really important thing to look into, and I agree that it's something that we need to kind of put at the forefront as we continue our partnership with Nehemiah and figure out ways to address these things in our community kind of piece by piece and make sure that we are doing our due diligence here, especially with words like squaw. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I just wanted to say I appreciate the Kathy for reaching out with that concern.
Just FYI, the Public Works Committee's already agreed to take it up in February.
Great. Awesome.
So it's
Thanks for that update. Thank you. That's all I have.
Brandon, did you want to address the next spring's Justified Anger class? Our possible participation in it?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to update you on yet. I have initiated conversations with Nehemiah about finding out a way to have all the council members still be able to participate and meet your open meetings requirements. So once I have an update from them as to how that would work, I'll let you know. I will say, following up on Alder Groupie's comment, she's correct. 13 members of our leadership team have completed the 9-week course as of last week. Was our last session. And got some informal feedback from everyone. They all thought that the course was exceptional in terms of providing background on history that was not taught in schools, or at least most people's schools, in providing people a space in which they can kind of confront that history and think about what that means both from them personally but also in their roles here in the city and maybe what some of that history is in Menonah as well. And so one of the takeaways from that is that we will look for ways to incorporate additional staff who have not gotten the opportunity to go through the course this fall in future sessions. There is a cost for us to participate, so I don't know that I can do all, we'll say 65 odd remaining staff members in one fell swoop, but we will look at ways that we can continue to cycle staff through so everyone gets the opportunity of that experience. On a separate note, we are looking at the possibility of working with Nehemiah to gain some sort of I guess the best way to look at it is it'd be like a library subscription where you could get access to a certain number of subscriptions, if you will, for the course, so members of staff or the community could check that out. I don't want to promise that too much because there's a lot of work involved with that, so not sure if and when we could get to that, but that is one item that we're looking at as part of our continued partnership with them, is to find a way to get access to the course to more people in a way that's meaningful. So as I have more on that, I'll let the council know.
That's awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Alder, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to the squaw circle and renaming. I just want to encourage, since that is an issue that impacts Native community, that the proper place to start with that is reaching out to the Native community. You need to get their blessing first versus moving on to that and then asking them to be a part of it. That really, taking that latter approach really can stress relationships, and it is not recommended. So I would say starting place number one is reaching out to the Ho-Chunk Nation, since they are the tribe in our area, and asking if this is something they care for, to either be a part of or care if we embark on. And if, you know, and then, and let that be your starting point. I think that's really of large importance.
Man, I just wanted to let you know you weren't here when we did the renaming of the Bay resolution, but the Native community was heavily involved in that discussion.
And that's
Yes.
where we started. That's
Well,
where we started.
Okay, well, my conversations with the Native community is incredibly different on that topic. And I'm not going to say what those conversations were here, but I could take that offline. I know Alder Kaur has refused to ever speak to me outside of council meetings, but if you ever would be open to that conversation, I welcome that. But yeah, my conversation with the Native community on that is very different than what your experience was. And I'm here as a resource to you as a Native woman.
I will take you up on that.
Alder Thomas.
Two things. I know for sure that when we named a house that name came from the Ho-Chunk community. And I hope that if we change Squaw Circle, that we let the women of the Ho-Chunk Nation make the recommendation for that name, because I don't think that's what happened to the Bay. I think
That's
that was
exactly correct.
the elder men, and we need the women.
Yeah.
I would like to honor the women of the Ho-Chunk Nation when we change that name, but we need to get the information from them and not from the
Okay,
my
so
thoughts on the matter.
let me just say Alder Thomas and Alder Goforth, since I was not only talking to the clan mothers, but also talking to the Ho-Chunk Nation representative about the changing of the Bay, I'll be happy to explain what went on there, but it's not as simple as asking the women to change the name.
Yeah.
So it's more, our government is complicated, their government is complicated and very different, and so I'm just saying, happy to do that when we get around to naming it.
I heard a lot from the Ho-Chunk women when the name of the Bay was recommended, because they felt they were offended. They actually asked me to vote against it because they were offended because they were not part of the naming process and the men did it. But that's a whole nother thing, and that's their politics, and we have
That's right.
our politics. But I do think that we need to push to allow the women of the Ho-Chunk Nation to assist us in that.
Like I said, I'd be happy to have a conversation with either of you. I was in the middle of that whole thing, and so I'd be happy to talk to explain.
I would just say, there are some complexities that you might not be aware of in that, Native communities with this type of government, it's very challenging to work with this type of government. I mean, I've said this before. We've been attacked by these governments, and so we don't take on these types of charges typically because we have other battles to face. And we could spend our time and money changing names, or we could spend our time and money doing real work that kind of helps our community and helps our inequities, helps us overcome our inequities. So I just really caution you that white people should not be leading this charge. Please take a breath and take a step back and stop the motion, stop the ball from rolling at this point, and someone needs to approach the Ho-Chunk Nation and ask if this is something they want to see happen. that is where it needs to start.
Thank you. Alder Corr.
Who do you suggest we speak with?
Well, you could try me, and I could go to them, or if you'd like, I can connect you to someone.
That would be great.
But I personally feel like I should maybe be the one to start that conversation.
Just to be clear.
Just as a Native woman
Cha-
on this body.
Can I
changing the-
call on people so we don't lose track of things here? Okay, Alderman.
No, I was just going to say, to be clear, the original suggestion to change the name of the bay was made in 2005, and it was tabled by this council. None of us were here, obviously, in 2005.
I know.
And at that time, the traditional council of the Ho-Chunk walked down to the waterfront and made a decision that it should be Wachowak Bay. And the government of the nation made it very clear that's the only name that it should be, and that came directly from the government of the Ho-Chunk. So,
Well, I can just,
so anyway, we can talk about it, but we did exactly what they said needed to happen and that they wanted to happen.
Alder Goforth, did you have something?
I don't feel like I'm being heard, so I'm not going to speak. Thank you.
No, I said I'm more than happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they'd like to bring up about diversity efforts? Alder Corr?
Yes, the library board was reviewing their bylaws, and we noticed with an eye of review that the bylaws did not include gender-neutral pronouns, and so we're updating those to address that. And I did notice that our current code does not include gender-neutral pronouns, and so I don't know when we plan to do a code update, but that should be something that's just folded in at the same time. There's a lot of reference to he or she, so I would prefer that we have that adjusted.
Anyone else? Okay, now we have something that the Sustainability Committee has asked, that similar item regarding sustainability efforts be placed on agendas and reports. So this will be on our agenda going forward. And I think, I don't know, Brian, if you're going to be talking to the department heads about agendas for their committees and whatever. But are there any updates or discussion on sustainability efforts that anyone would like to report on? Nothing? Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to committee reports. Alder Goforth.
Yes, you may have seen an article by Chris Rickert in the Wisconsin State Journal maybe 2-3 weekends ago on the pagoda. That, we were hoping that would generate some comments coming into Landmarks from the public, letting us know, what their feelings are about the pagoda, but we still have not gotten any. We still won't have that next opinion by the December 8th meeting, but we do have it on the agenda. We are not going to make a decision, but we are going to, review more materials and some other comments. And other than that, yeah, I think all my other committees are covered by other folks here.
Alder Thomas.
There's no public safety or media meeting in December. We'll take the Christmas break. And for those of you who didn't have a chance to attend, the police department had a pancake breakfast yesterday to raise funds for the K-9 unit, and it was a wonderful experience. If you weren't able to go to breakfast and you want to contribute to the K-9 fund, I'm sure they'd be happy to have your money.
All record.
We've shifted the date of library board from the 21st to the 14th to address potential conflicts with people celebrating the holidays.
Alder Wood.
Parks Board will be meeting on the 14th and license review on the 15th.
Alder Moore.
Sustainability Committee meeting is on Thursday. It's not the report.
Alder Groupie.
Transit meets on Wednesday at 6, and we are going to be inviting or welcoming a member from Madison Metro to discuss potential collaboration in the future, and also discuss, Diane Mickelbank, our director of the Senior Center, will also be there just to make sure that we are including seniors and advocating for seniors and potential changes. So that meeting, as with all our others, is open to the public, and if anyone has input they'd like to share, please feel free to attend.
Thank you, City Clerk. I just wanted to follow up on something that was talked about quite a while ago, but I did finally get an answer, was why the population figures reported by the Department of Administration didn't match what came out with the census, and it really was because of the COVID delay in the census results. So our next year's population estimate will reflect the increase that was seen with the census, and it will build on that. It'll be a projection starting with the census figure as a base, and then a projection of what they think increased. So that's why there was a discrepancy that's not common, and I just verified that that's really what happened. So.
And what is the number now?
You would ask that, and I don't know. It's like 8,500 something. Send me an email, and when I respond, you'll see the number. It's the higher number, like by 400 and some. So it was quite a substantial difference, and that sort of flagged like, whoa. So that, and then quickly that candidate packets are available if you'd like to run for office. 3 seats are open. Alder Goforth, Alder Kerr, and Alder Groupie are all their seats are up for re-election or open. So please, if you're interested, we have them there at City Hall for you, and we have information as far as I can provide. Most of the information would come from the Ethics Commission. So, but we do have packets put together. So I think that's it for me.
Okay. Chief McMullen?
I don't think I stood up here enough tonight. But I made some notes. I gotta read stuff so I don't forget anything. So, first of all, I just want to start by thanking Joan. She's done an awesome job for me since I've been here. I know you're winding down your time, so I just wanted to say thank you. You've done a fabulous job for me, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'm going to highlight my volunteers like I try and do every month. They've done a fantastic job over the holidays. We had 800 some hours of staffing in November, all volunteer hours, which is just fantastic. We're really busy. Today alone, we've had 8 calls for service today since 7 o'clock. Volunteers are responding on every single call, which is, again, amazing during the day, during the holiday season. Really nice to have the volunteers that we do. I had 5 new volunteers start November 1st. They are actually been attending drill and having a great time. I have 7 more interviews tomorrow night. All 7 of them are very interested in joining, which will put us at 43 volunteers, which is 2 shy of my max because I'm out of space. So,
how many were there when you started?
There were 33, so we've gained 10. We've lost a few people that have moved out of the area, but we've gained enough that we're going to be at 43. Working with Alder Goforth, we were having a discussion on Thursday to do some work on the hydrants in the city, possibly an art project through Madison Art Commission. Sounds like a fabulous thing. We tried to do something earlier in the year, I think, and time got away from us, so we're going to meet again on Thursday to start discussing that and seeing what we can do with that.
Has the Public Works Department been involved in those discussions?
I think we're just at the very first stages of talking about
Okay.
it. So I'm interested in seeing what their proposal is, and we'll go from there. Okay. So haven't even had a meeting to discuss what they're looking to do. Okay. So we'll go from there. Mm-hmm. Squad 5 is decommissioned. It's out of service at the county level. It's been stripped of all its equipment, except for the plaque, which we're going to take off and mount on engine 2 because it's our squad. So we'll be working on getting that up for sale probably by the end of the year. The medical director is official. We signed the contract last week. So she's officially our medical director. MVP is officially our medical direction as of January 1st. But she's already put in about 30 hours here already. We met last week. We're meeting weekly for 2 or 3 hours. Couple of quick things that are coming at the beginning of the year. I wasn't sure if we're going to have a meeting on the 20th, so I wanted to mention them in case we didn't, but it sounds like we're going to, so I'll be here for that too. We are working closely right now with both Maple Bluff and McFarland to redo our response plans. Maple Bluff has an engine that's generally available just based on their number of calls. They do staff a full-time staff member along with an intern and a couple of volunteers. So they're going to be on our first due. So if we have a structure fire, they'll be sending an engine this way. Currently, we pull 3 pieces of equipment from McFarland if there's a structure fire. We're trying to reduce the load on them. So when you have a fire, we'll still get their ladder coming in and one of their chiefs, but we're not pulling an engine, a ladder, and a chief out of McFarland to come up here for structure fires. So Maple Bluff will come down and McFarland will come up, and we're going to be offering them the same in return. So we'll respond to Maple Bluff with a ladder because they don't have one, and down to McFarland with an engine like we currently do. Talk about code updates, Alder Kerr. That's on my project list for next year, is a fire code update. That's a significant one. So I'll keep the DEI mandates in mind as I do that. Last thing, or the next last thing I'm talking about, you may hear me start to talk about this as a 4-minute city. Monona is a great place for me to try and implement this for AED coverage. We have a very discrete set of boundaries around Monona. There's a lot of programs out there to work on that to try and get an AED on scene of cardiac arrest in 4 minutes. Been working with some folks at a national level. We're likely going to be selected early next year to be a proposal city for that to see how well it works. There's a new brand of AED that's coming out. It's wireless and it hooks up with the comm center and it's rechargeable. It's about the size of one of your house thermometers. It's fabulous. So more to come on that, but I've put us in to possibly be a proposal city for that. Last thing I got is I'll lead into Chief Cheney Austin talking. We're working with our police partners to try and provide them not just the CPR training like we have in the past, but Dane County's really been focusing on high performance CPR, more of a pit crew kind of format. Myself, the new medical director, a couple of the folks in the county, we're actually meeting tomorrow. We've redesigned the entire CPR project to reflect the high performance CPR that we're going to give to all of our partners, like the police department and anybody else we train. But in part of that, we're also working on deploying naloxone with our officers. So we have a high number of overdoses here in the city. So having the ability for them to give Narcan if needed for folks that they find that have overdosed is high on our list, approved by the medical director, and we're going to be working on that. And I think that's all I've got. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any. But
Anyone have any questions for the chief? No? Thank you very much for the update.
Awesome. I appreciate all of you. So I will leave it in Chief Cheney Austin's capable hands.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. I would like to go before Chief McMullen.
I was already all primed up.
It's written here for the record. You have one hardworking and innovative police chief, fire chief. Chief McMullen is great. Obviously, you know, we hopefully know we have a good working relationship. But I really appreciate the innovation and really the camaraderie and teamwork that he brings to public safety. So as he mentioned, we will be receiving some great training from the fire department. I have authorized the use of individual carry Narcan, as has our medical director, which really we need the authorization from and the script from. So that has been great. And with that, we'll be able to save lives. Right now, officers are beating EMS and paramedic and medical staff to a lot of these calls, or they stumble across them themselves. And so to be able to have that life-saving medication, it will play a valuable role in keeping folks alive. As was mentioned earlier today, the Black Issue for a New Day and Justified Anger course through Nehemiah. As staff, we all talked about that this morning, but great training. I too would highly recommend that. And we're beginning to explore ways of how to involve and incorporate the rest of our staff, particularly the forward-facing, public-facing staff, to take part in some of that programming. So it's a really great course. Switching gears, Monona Grove will be taking the lead on promoting and announcing the name of our new canine. Winnipeg School has made a selection that is top secret until they choose to release that information, but I know what it is. As was mentioned by Alder Thomas, thank you, Alder Thomas, for being there, helping to coordinate, helping to share the smiles of all the wonderful kids that saw Santa that day and ate a lot of pancakes. But thank you to all who showed up for the pancake breakfast, canine fundraiser, arts and crafts, and a picture with Santa. That was wonderful. We're still taking donations, as was mentioned. It's a very expensive program, as I think many of you know. Just the cost of both the dog and the training is about $15,000, and all of that is donor funded. So thank you to our vet. Thank you to the donors who've been very, very generous. We could not sustain this program without taxpayer involvement, without, well, there are taxpayers involved, they're donors. But so thank you that we don't have to necessarily rely on operational funds for that program, much needed program. Our new recruit officer is doing well still. Hopefully she's writing her speech as class speaker. She graduates on the 17th of December. She's got a couple of final exams she's studying for and prepping for right now, and I just spoke to her on Sunday, and we're feeling good about that. So interviews for a new dispatcher and new police officer are taking place this week. Hope to present, get through the police officer selection process and present that person to the Police and Fire Commission at their meeting later this month. Let's see. We completed our first of 2 training days for our Badge of Equity training that we're doing with Gloria Reyes and her organization, as well as Tamara Oman from Expo and her organization with respect to trauma-informed care and officer wellness. Piggybacking on that subject, I have been working with Leah and HR, which is also Leah, as we all know, in instituting wellness days for all of our staff next year. I have a meeting set up with our EAP provider, and myself to just iron out some of the hard logistics behind that, but everything looks good, so that we should be able to start to implement that for our staff. Wellness days is, if you're not aware, it's a growing trend in law enforcement, an opportunity for officers and non-sworn staff to connect with a licensed therapist or an EAP provider and discuss any topic they want to discuss, but hopefully geared towards wellness and what they're doing to be able to sustain a good work-life balance and live a more full and healthier life, which benefits all of us. And I think that's it. I too wasn't necessarily expecting a December 20th day, as Brian promised me. There may not be.
There was no promises.
There's written record of it somewhere. I'll dig their email. But if there's something that comes up between now and then, I'll obviously share it with Brian and the rest of you, but I too will be here on the 20th to share any updates. Any questions?
Anyone else to go for it? Not really questions, but I just wanted to comment. I really appreciated reading about the SRO and Officer Wunsch and his work. I noticed numerous incidences that could have been cited and were not. Multiple sexual assault incidents that he handled. He prevented people from self-harm. He returned stolen goods. And, I just felt it was really important to acknowledge these success stories, especially when we see neighboring districts struggling with current situations. So I really appreciate his positive work. And even one of the details that really jumped out at me was that the number of students that have come to him and confided things in him, like reporting a friend going to possibly kill themselves. Really, really important work. So thank you for that. And would you like to comment about how that program is going?
Thank you. Thanks for that. And I did meet with the Monona Grove Superintendent, Dr. Olson, I believe it was last month. We both reported on our side of things that we believe that things are going well. I think Monona Grove is still working out sort of the matrix on their end and sort of internal discussions on what that would look like when to involve police. Right now, Luke is still getting a lot of questions and being tapped on the shoulder, but he's got his marching orders from me. And so he's been navigating that with staff there with respect to, hey, you know, this isn't something my boss wants me to write a ticket for. Or in some instances, you know, Luke has written a ticket or two. That's usually resulted in me or Lieutenant Duman getting a phone call prior to that just to, you know, make sure that he's fulfilling the mission and the orders given to him, which he has been. He's been doing a great job. It is a change. It's a change both for Luke, who was an SRO in that school for a few years, and then obviously the school. So I think folks are adjusting well. One thing that I asked Luke to do, which he is doing, is highlight more of those positive interactions that he's had. He can't catch them all, you know, it's tough to do. But he has been trying to capture in his report some of those sort of feel-good moments where it's been beneficial to have the SRO in the school. Now, of course, I think we all know that we don't all agree on this topic, but I will still stand firm that I do value and see benefits of the SRO in a school. And at a time in which we've had another school shooting in this country, at a time in which we have a neighboring school district have a gun incident in school, I do find value in that resource. We can talk about it. We're engaged with the students, faculty, and parents. We have that relationship that people can come to us and have those what-if type conversations. They can plan as best we can for those type of incidents. And unfortunately, I think that my federal employer at Madison and their colleagues at the school district are struggling with that divide. So I value the relationship that we have with the school district. I, of course, am flexible and willing to tweak that here and there if needed, but I certainly believe that they're getting their money's worth, and so all of us as members of the community.
Thank you. That's great. Anyone else?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You see, we have our deputy clerk here who's observing in preparation for.
There's still time to run.
I was actually just sitting here thinking, have you taught her how to take minutes?
I'm hoping she'll be better at it than me.
Because she's writing like a band sheet for everything.
I'm writing,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Aline, if you would like to say something, you're welcome to, but don't feel like you have to. You can wait till 2 weeks from now, or a month from now.
Introverts unite.
Yes, exactly. Administrator Gatto, if you have anything to report.
Yeah, just two real quick things. Tax bills will be going up shortly in the mail. And then lastly, with the weather changing here in the next couple of days, yard waste collection will be ending at the end of this week. We'll have some communication that will go out pertaining to that as well. The yard waste collection site will actually close at the end of this week as well. So.
All right, thank you. Then we do have some appointments. It's time to reappoint election inspectors. Joan submitted a whole list, and then there's also a list of chief election inspectors, all of them effective January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2023. So is there a motion to approve these?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, can I ask one question? So sorry. I noticed, I really appreciate reading the staff reports, and because it's impossible for us to attend all meetings. And I noticed, though, that there's not a Parks Director report, and so I did go back through past packets. I went back to August, and I haven't seen one since, I don't know that I've ever seen one. And so I was just wondering, is just knowing that Parks is such a big part of our Monona lifestyle, our community, and our budget, is there a reason that we don't get a staff update from the Parks Director, or is it possible to start getting one, or have I just missed it?
No, I think it's just a workflow issue, but I can pass it along to him. And
Okay.
It's a conversation with some different departments that have workflows that kind of ebb and flow throughout the year.
Okay.
I do keep track of those, and there's more than one department that
There are,
doesn't
okay.
that doesn't routinely turn them in, and
Okay.
we're working on that.
Okay, thank you.
So did somebody make a motion to adjourn? And was it seconded?
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Molly.
Molly. And the second was Doug.
Doug. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.